Welcome to Russia's World, where you will hear prominent voices, psychoanalysts, psychologists, therapists, philosophers, and thought leaders talk about a variety of mental health concerns and problems, including how to deal with anxiety, depression, and chronic conditions, and how to become more resilient, find inner peace, be emotionally engaged in your personal and professional life, and just be your beautiful, authentic self. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Russia's World. Today we have a very special guest. We have Laura Ranieri Roy. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are
Wonderful.
you?
Very good. And the toughest question first, how would you briefly describe yourself to our audience here? What would you say?
Oh my goodness. Well, I am what's called an Egyptologist, which means I'm an ancient Egypt expert. But unlike the little more scholarly PhDs that lecture, to the highest levels in university, or archaeologists that show their pottery shards and all of their broken stones, my motto is I inspire passion about Egypt's past. I have a drama and writing background, so I'm a good communicator. I went back to get my MA in Egyptology, and I'm to spread the word about how fascinating ancient Egypt is. It's like everything old is new again in Egypt these days. So very, very exciting times.
Wonderful. And you're also the founder of Ancient Egypt Alive. And I like that. Just the whole view of seeing a culture that's from long time ago as something that's still alive and thriving and something to new things to discover. And also your passion comes through too. You want to bring that to the general public. I've been in education for a couple of decades, and it's rare to also see that with educators who they just teach their stuff and they're not passionate about it. Not just a few who are like myself and you here. So that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. It's great to have the history leap off the page, leap off the dusty rocks, and I've been doing tours to Egypt since 2012. And we also do more immersive tours and really making it resonate. There's just too many of these. Sometimes you even travel through the sites and the guides rhyme off the sizes of the structures and how many stones. And some of the signage is just terrible at these museums and sites. It's like, this is boring, but it's really interesting, the storytelling you can do around it. And the stories of these kings, these ancient kings who lived 3,500 years ago, that had so many things in common with you or I. I mean, they were humans and they had great strengths, great foibles, really wonderful stories.
Yeah, and I like it how you also relate it to modern things. So, describing this engineer as an Elon Musk of technology when it comes to pyramids, the
Oh, there's
innovation
a
of
key.
pyramids, and I just
Absolutely.
love that connection. But it made me think. I mean, building pyramids is not something easy, right? And you need to design it first, and then also to recreate it and to build it, right? So let's talk about King Sneferu. Is that it?
Sneferu. Well, you know what? We don't know if it was Sneferu, because they're a little vague on the vowel sounds.
Okay.
We've translated, we've cracked the code of the hieroglyphs. Anyway, Sneferu, we'll call him. He's the father of the guy who built the Great Pyramid, and he was a pyramid innovator. So he was in search of the true pyramid form. What year are we talking about? We're talking about 2600 BCE, 2500 BCE. We're never sure within 100 years. So we're talking about 4,600 years ago.
Mhm.
Before the Great Pyramid was built, there was a step pyramid that predated this. He wanted to make the true pyramid, but it was like SpaceX we're all hearing about,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
rocket launch. Sometimes there's failed trials. You get the angle wrong. So we have the bent pyramid
And
that
we
you
don't
can
think
visit.
of that, right? I mean, we don't see it, we don't think of it, but it took experimentation to get it right, right?
And you can go see these things. What's crazy is
Mm.
the Bent Pyramid, which is a phenomenal site. There's two early pyramids, and you can climb inside them, Arash. You got to go and do this. Go to Egypt, go to Dashur, and go inside the pre-trial pyramids that are kind of not perfect. And then this king abandoned the Bent Pyramid because you don't want to be buried in something imperfect. That's not going to guarantee your afterlife. He went on to create the first true pyramid, the Red Pyramid, which is smaller than the Great Pyramid. You can go inside. But guess what? We don't know what happened to Sneferu. We didn't find his sarcophagus. And if you go there and you see him in any of these pyramids, let me know. We're looking for him.
Okay, awesome. Why the shape of a triangle? Why? I mean, this is like in religions we see that, and the Holy
Hmm.
Triangle and so on. How did that come about? Is there any information about that? Why they chose a triangle?
Well, I think as the great Dr. Mark Lehner talks about in one of the books I most recommend, the Complete Pyramids. Dr. Mark Lehner is the world authority. He's been working there for 40 years. And he talks about the pyramid is such a common shape. You alluded to this, like the human mind thinks in analogies all over the world, and the idea of it's a common shape in kids' toys. You have even the Mayan pyramids,
Hmm.
thinking aspiring upwards towards the sky and the sun. So it's not surprising that many different ancient cultures thought in terms the ziggurats almost, they're not exactly pyramids, but we all aspire to the sky, and it is a very common geometric form. So that is not the greatest innovation. The Egyptians didn't invent the pyramid, but they certainly invented the uniqueness of, sorry, they didn't invent the triangle, but they invented the pyramid form
And
as a
so,
tomb, as many things.
as to the building of it, there are different theories. Some say it's aliens, because it's like really hard to build. I mean, I can see that we didn't have the technology back then. Some people say also slaves, and apparently that's also not correct. It wasn't slaves either.
What do you think?
I don't. I think it's ancient alien slaves.
Ancient aliens.
There
Let's
you
go
go.
for that. How many of your
Yeah.
listeners go for ancient aliens? I'm sorry. Spoiler alert. We
Yeah.
actually have the evidence that, yeah, we don't know the complete 100% particulars of every, we don't have the how they were built completely, but we know a lot. We know who they were. They were Egyptians. It was conscripted labor from across Egypt. It was the biggest nationwide great participation project where the Pharaoh sent out his men across the land to conscript people. Corvée labor, they called it, to come. And you know why they wanted to do it? It was the summertime, the Nile was flooded. Hey, come in your time off, a couple months a year, and be part of the greatest structure ever built for the king, the divine king, who was a god at that point. And I mean, again, I'm going to go back to SpaceX. Arash, if you were asked by Elon Musk,
Yeah. Yeah.
come and work for 2, 3 months, okay, it's free, but you'd have the volunteer experience. You'd be able to say you were part of getting to Mars, and you get your taxes paid. Would you
There are
and be
people ready
fed?
to go to Mars. I mean,
Oh,
that's even
maybe.
worse,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Well, they were, oh, yeah. You get an afterlife too, but
Yeah.
you also would be fed and you'd be housed.
Yeah.
It was a pretty compelling prospect to go and work on this project. So they did have thousands of laborers over the course of, again, we're thinking it's 20, 30 years now, working most of them 2 or 3 months of the year, very long work days, 10 work days. We have their barracks, we have their little graves. We know where they worked. We have an annal of a shipman who brought rocks to the Great Pyramid, telling us where he gathered the rocks, brought them to and the schedule of this. And we even have their bodies of the workmen. We have the cemetery. Some of them received medical care. They had evidence of bones broken, and then they got healed on the job. They took good care of their workers. They ate a lot of
Wow.
protein.
Wow.
So this was discovered in the 1990s by Dr. Mark Lehner and Dr. Zahi Hawass. The guy with a hat, you've seen him on everything. Dr. Zahi Hawass. He's he really got Joe Rogan upset on his podcast and
Oh,
very
wow.
controversial. But
Yeah.
anyway, great archaeologist for decades. And the village of the pyramid builders, who were Egyptians, were found in the 1990s on the Giza Plateau.
Wow. Yeah. Because that's not the narrative I have, or the image I have in mind. I have in mind like these slaves, and they're being whipped by this alien creature who's got like an animal head or something. That's the impression I have.
Or
And I
Charlton Heston.
Yeah, Charles Heston, there you go. But the fact is that people actually signed up for it, and it was an honor in many ways to be part of it. Or there's
Yeah, they
not as
had
much
their arms
force.
twisted. Yeah, they had their arms
Yeah,
twisted. Wouldn't you
and it
love
comes with healthcare, so which is pretty awesome.
and the promise of a great after if you die on the site,
Yeah.
you get a lovely burial,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
promise of an afterlife. And the Egyptians cared about the next life more than they cared about this life.
I
So
really want to talk about that. The spiritual aspect of it, religion, how it like evolved, developed, how certain of the kings embraced it and encouraged it, and all as well. So let's, yeah, what can you say about that?
oh my goodness, where do we start? Let's the focus in the question. The people say that, oh my God, those Egyptians were obsessed with death, all these mummies and tombs, like they must have just been so morbid. They actually loved life and they wanted it to go on forever. So they were more concerned about building their houses of eternity and having all of these rituals to ensure their soul would go on for millions and millions of years to be reborn. Very crazy rituals. Very detailed rituals to keep the spirit alive.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
What would be some
yeah.
of the rituals, like if you could give an example to us, please?
Well, it's interesting. My background was both in, before I did Egyptology, I did dramatic arts and I did literature. They had so much written down, which is why we know so much about them. And initially, the writing started with accounting, but the prayers, they had
Mhm,
magical spells written down.
mhm,
But there was drama connected with it because to enact these rites, you had to have priests read the texts aloud and go through certain performances. There was a ritual called the opening of the mouth that they performed both on the dead mummies to animate all their senses, but even on the statues, where sometimes the spirit, which was divided into the Ka and the Ba, the life force, which was hungry, and the Ba, the double, the personality, anyway, could inhabit. If something happens to the mummy, you need them to come. That's why you see all these great statues in ancient Egypt of
mhm,
kings, because it was almost like this is where the spirit can inhabit. So they did these opening of the mouth ceremonies where they'd reanimate the senses, the taste, the nose, the hearing, the sight with this little object. So they'd have to recite prayers, spells, do rituals, and before the mummy was put in the ground too, to make sure everything they survived the passage through the hours of the night to the next life.
mhm. And that shows. I mean, they're not afraid of death. There is like something that comes after, and also leaving a legacy for others to see, which is whether it's something as big as the pyramids or mummies to preserve them in a way, but also the knowledge, I guess, of like an afterlife that they do exist afterwards and can see their work that they've done, right? So it's something
Well,
that continues.
yes, don't you think that Ramses the Great and Tutankhamun, they succeeded?
Yes.
They have an afterlife. Are we still saying their names? I mean, that's one of the markers of are you going to survive? For the ancient Egyptians, the Ren, which was what the name was called in ancient Egypt,
Mhm,
in hieroglyphs, the Ren was an essential part of survival. That's why the name is written over everything. So the fact we're still saying the name of these pharaohs
mhm,
and we know
mhm,
about them 3,000, 4,000, 4,500 years after, it says to me that they pretty much succeeded. They have an afterlife. They're still in the public consciousness, and
mhm,
we're still fascinated with them. And we can
mhm.
still go visit the mummies. Oh my God, we've got the mummies of the New Kingdom kings on display at one of the new museums in Cairo.
Yeah, and it seems like every generation thinks they're ahead of all the others and they figure things out. Like we invented the wheel or we created sliced toast now. It's like the idea of also like I'm leading towards gender fluid kings and queens,
Oh, you
right? And
saw
this
that
is
article of
something,
mine. Yeah.
yes. And so I was like, I find that fascinating because like we think we're way ahead. No, we're not. Look at the ancient Egypt.
They had some interesting sexuality stuff there. I mean, it was a
Mhm,
bit different, and maybe I wrote that about Akhenaten. I mean, to be
mhm,
cheeky and modern, but we have this king who is my reason for getting fascinated by ancient Egypt. He's really interesting looking. He's very narrow face with big lips, and he's got this narrow torso, but these wide thighs and this round stomach. He just, most of the kings look big, powerful, well built, striding forward. This guy is weird looking. He looks transsexual. Like, is he a man?
mhm, mhm.
Did he have a disease? Well, the fact is, it was symbolic. He was portraying himself, he was changing the religion, and he was saying, you know what? I am not just the king, I'm the queen, I'm the mother and father of this country. So he's portraying himself as kind of a man woman leader
Mhm.
to say to the people, everything can come through me. I am your I am your conduit. I can get to the ultimate God, which he perceived as this aspect of the sun, the Aten. And he was the first one to say, no, 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 to these other gods. It's the Aten is the main god, and you can only reach him through me and maybe Nefertiti, his beautiful wife. Yes, she's got the rays of the Aten shining on her too. So he's considered the first monotheist, even though it was really henotheism because he let some of them, it was like a major god, but he let the household gods carry on. But he banished a lot of the processions of the big gods. And that's why people say he was the inspiration for Moses. He was the first idealist. He was a madman. He did a lot of crazy things too. He was a tyrant. He was very cruel to some of his people, but he changed the art, he changed the religion, he changed the capital. And yeah, he might have. I think my own theory is that I think he was sexually pretty fluid. I think he might have.
Mhm.
He probably would have gone for the operation if he'd lived today, or if he could have, if he lived in a province or state where it was possible. But he was married. He did have six daughters.
Uh-huh.
And he had Tutankhamun was his son. We know that that was, we know by testing that Akhenaten was Tutankhamun's father. And we know the mummy that is his mother, but we're not sure who she is yet.
And the role of females there. I mean, Cleopatra is obviously somebody everybody knows about, and that there is this opportunity of them to rule way back. I mean, that's unheard of. So what can you tell us about Cleopatra in this case, or other
Oh,
women like her as well?
oh my goodness. Cleopatra, it wasn't just Cleopatra. There were seven Cleopatras. She was Cleopatra the seventh.
Wow.
The last in the line of the nasty, murderous Ptolemaic rulers, these Macedonian Greeks who poisoned and killed one another and vied for rulership of Egypt after Alexander conquered Egypt in 332 BC.
Mhm.
Alexander was only in Egypt, I don't know, a year maybe, and then he went off to conquer other lands. He died very young, and his general, his top general, Ptolemy the First, took over. Anyway, Cleopatra was at the end of that. We call it the dynasty, the Ptolemaic dynasty, and she was not a great beauty. But you've probably seen these women who, are a little unconventional looking. She had a bit of a hooked nose,
Mhm.
but she was said to have a mellifluous voice. And she was brilliant. She spoke many different languages. She used to experiment with chemistry, and she had remedies for baldness and
Wow.
different beauty treatments. And she used to bathe in donkey milk. And she
So
seduced.
an influencer in a way,
She was
like an influencer.
she was amazing. She was a very good ruler. She was a very strong, intelligent woman. She wasn't a vapid, model type woman. She led with her
No,
brains. But
Mark
that
Antony was crazy about her.
and so is Julius Caesar, who
And so
is
Julius Caesar,
yeah.
exactly, right, of
So,
course.
but it just shows you that a woman who isn't a traditional beauty, but who has brains and charisma, she did remarkable things. And she was the last great ruler of Egypt. And then the Romans
Mhm.
conquered, Augustus came, and it became a province of Rome.
Mhm.
Now, way earlier, go back 1400 years before Cleopatra. And I'm just going to make sure my phone
Mhm.
does not ding on you. Sorry about that.
No
I don't
problem.
know how to turn this off. And you go back 14, and you've got Hatshepsut, and
Oh yeah.
she was a great queen way back in the New Kingdom. The rightful pharaoh was only 10. Her husband died. You've got like an 8 or 10 year old Tutmosis III. She became the guardian. And at first it was like, okay, I'm co-ruling with him as the guardian. And then 7 years into it, she said, I'm taking on the full panoply of kingship, and I'm going to portray myself as a man. And she portrayed herself with a red skin like a man with a beard. And she was a great builder. Hatshepsut was a phenomenal builder. She did great trade missions. Go back 1,000 years before Hatshepsut. So we're talking about 1400s to about 20, 2800 800, and you might even have in the first dynasty a woman who may have ruled. We have lots of instances, even before Cleopatra, of about four or five. Nefertiti was a great queen. She might have ruled Egypt. I've got lots of instances of great, strong women. It was a good time to be a woman. Women had a lot of rights in ancient Egypt.
Mhm. Mhm. And it shows with the mythology too of the times. I mean, we have both gods and goddesses and all of that. There's a balance there. It's not like, just the male aspect and so on. So I find that that's also quite open, quite fluid in that sense of again giving women and having women priests and so on. That's quite advanced, especially for those times.
Oh yeah, the women had uh first of all the gods and goddesses. I mean, the female goddesses were incredibly powerful.
Mhm.
Isis
Yeah, it's just
was the longest lasting, perhaps most successful of the Egyptian gods. She was worshipped into Europe into maybe the 6th century AD. You'll
mhm,
find temples to Isis, and
mhm.
Isis coexisted with Mary. And the
That's
name for
interesting.
Isis, when Mary traveled through Egypt, right?
Hmm.
So the name in ancient Egyptian, the name Mary means beloved. And
Hmm.
sometimes the goddess Isis was just called the beloved one, Mary. And
Hmm.
so the Virgin Mary was named after, we think, Isis. And Miriam also is beloved of. So we have names from the Bible. We have a lot of symbolism and analogies and inspiration of the ancient Egyptians on the great religions of the world, Christianity and Islam and Judaism.
It'd be interesting if we can trace Jesus when he was traveling. I mean, there's the idea if he went to maybe India or maybe Egypt. Like, is there anything that we can see there or not? What do
The
we know?
baby Jesus, we have a crypt in
Right.
Cairo that we visit on my tours, and I'm doing a tour in October. Actually, we have a couple of spots left, but it's a little last minute. October 25th, March is almost full. But in Cairo, we love to go to Coptic Cairo, where Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus stayed for a time underneath the Church of St. Sergius. So there's a cave there. So as a baby, yes, he may have sojourned in
Hmm.
Egypt for sure. And Mary
Very
spent
interesting.
quite a lot of time in Egypt too. We have lots of sites where it said that Mary went.
I'd also like to know about the common people because we don't hear much about them. So ordinary people, farmers, and so on. What was their life like? What was the way they lived, the belief system, and so on? Like what drove them? What were they interested in? What do we know about them?
Oh gosh, well, do you have a few hours? Do you have a few weeks? We know a lot about them. And again, because the Egyptians wrote everything down and drew everything out. And
Mhm.
it's interesting. We have not a lot of living sites. By that, I mean we don't have a lot of town sites because the Egyptians tended to live in the west bank of the Nile, which was more wetter ground that didn't survive, out of mud brick homes that didn't survive. And it's the mortuary structures on the East Bank. They lived on the East Bank and on the West Bank where the sun sets. It's the mortuary structures, so we have very few. But getting to the common people, we have this wonderfully preserved village of Deir el-Medina, which is the village of the craftsmen who built the Valley of the Kings. So we're talking, the dates are between 1500 and say 1100 BCE. And we have their homes. We have their where they lived, where they cooked their food, where they slept. And we have all of these pottery shards with these inscriptions on them, kind of like post-it notes, ancient post-it
Oh,
notes.
cool.
And they wrote
Okay.
these little letters and they talked about village life and they complained about work and what was going on. And this guy's sleeping with my wife and hey, my boss, I have a real beef with my boss. Whenever there's, he doesn't ever call for me, but whenever there's beer, do you think he calls for me? No, he doesn't call for me when there's beer. Let it be known I need more beer. So anyway, they were so similar to us with their gripes and their
Yeah.
grievances. Um, it depends on their class. I mean, they tended to be agriculturalists, tilling the field if they weren't craftspeople.
Mhm.
They went to temple, they partook in these wonderful festivals. They had festivals all through the year where they hoped to catch a glimpse of the gods coming out of the temple, these little statues, and ask, will I have a good crop next year? Will my wife be pregnant? Looking for augurs from the gods. They could pray outside and in certain places in the great temples. Yes, they were happy people living along the Nile, this
Mhm.
fertile band with great food and simple existences. But it's amazing, some of the sophistication of how they lived and what they ate. Actually, I have a lady doing a course for me in November online. Anyone in the world can take it. The village of Deir el-Medina and inside the workers' village. It's in November. It's for 4 weeks, but or 3 weeks. But yeah, we know a lot about them through inscriptions. What can I tell you?
So there
They
was not a
built,
lot of oppression because that's something we say. You got a king, you got a monarchy, you got a pharaoh. Like there's not much freedom, or did they feel like relatively they could live their life pretty simply and do what they
yes,
wanted?
absolutely. They lived
Yeah.
their lives free. Now, it was pretty bad in Akhenaten. He
Mhm.
changed the capital to the middle of Egypt, where tourists don't usually go, but I'm actually going in March with my group. Very barren area, and it looks like they died very young. They're hard lives of
Okay.
the have-nots, of the people who didn't have the money. They had to
Mhm.
construct their homes, and it was rough under certain of the tyrants. They had a worse time, and Akhenaten would be one of them. But under the benevolent, the wealth, in times of prosperity,
Mhm.
they had pretty good lives. Egypt is divided into three kingdoms for your listeners, okay? There's the Old Kingdom, which is, say, between 2600 and 2200s, the Pyramid Age.
Mhm.
Then there are these periods called intermediate periods. There's three of them. They last about 100 years, 100. They're intermediate periods means areas of division and civil war. And between the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom, there was a period of that. Then between Middle and New, around 1700, this is a bad time for the common people. There was famine, there was lack of central authority. Egypt was suffering a lot during these intermediate periods, and that's when everybody was really struggling. And but during the kingdom periods, it was pretty good for the middle class, for the working class, and of course for the kings.
And in terms of their identity, is it kind of a mosaic of different identities and cultures? Is it more like monolithic, or is it like more varied in terms of
Well, the
culture?
Egyptians were very centrist. They were almost
Mhm.
like America today, which is like make America great again. Very,
Mhm.
we are Egyptian. But does that mean that Egyptians looked like me? Did they look more? They actually looked more like you. They were like,
Mhm.
actually, the ones up north were more like Middle Eastern, right? They're lighter skin, right? But they were Mediterranean, Middle Eastern looking. And then the further south you get, the darker skin comes in. So I call it a multicultural society. They looked Egyptian when we start to talk about color. What drives me crazy, Cleopatra did not look like Liz Taylor, as I said, but
Yeah.
she also certainly did not look like that sub-Saharan African actress in the Netflix
Oh, yeah,
special
yeah.
that made
Yes.
everyone look not even like Nubians, like Sudanese. They looked like, I don't know, Middle African
Many experts
people.
complained about that. I read
Ah,
about that. Yes.
ridiculous. And then the only white guy was a nasty Roman or a eunuch or
Mhm.
something. Like
Mhm.
this is, they were Egyptian colored. They were, as I say, fairer in the north, darker skinned in the south. They were not black Africans except in the 25th dynasty when the Nubians ruled Africa. And there are many actually great Nubians, we'll call them, because they come up from the Sudan that were part of the Egyptian court too. So I love the 25th dynasty kings, the Kushites. They were strong rulers, but you can't say, I mean, Khufu was not black. I mean, Ramses was definitely Mediterranean. They've done DNA on Tutankhamun and Ramses, and they skewed more with European type DNA, but there were Nubians in Egypt as well. So that's as far as
Mhm.
I'll go there.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And so your passion, how did it come about? Why Egypt? Why ancient Egypt specifically? About yourself? How did that come about? How did you find it? How did it resonate with you? What would you say?
Well, I'm not Egyptian. I'm from
Yeah.
Toronto, and my father actually was probably his grandparents were Russian Jewish. My mom was from the prairies, and
Hmm.
English, French. But I've always been a history fanatic, and
Yeah.
when I was a little kid, and I think I got it in reruns. In the 70s, there was a show called I, Claudius about the Roman emperors.
Oh, I love that show. I read the book
I
too.
My first crush was
Awesome.
Derek Jacobi. So I fell in love with ancient history. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
when I got to grade 9, I got to take Latin and I took classics. So I got scholarships and I was into Greece and Rome. And then I got an opportunity to lead. I was working in marketing for a company that did Egypt tours. And I got to go and escort a group in my early 20s. And I was an Egyptophile and I went back to school. I thought, oh, this is better than Greece and Rome, even. So it really got into my blood. But it wasn't until around 2010 that something shot through me. And I am a bit spiritual like you, Arash. I don't know. I think I saw the movie Cairo Time. There's got to be something I'm doing in Egypt. I think I want to write or get a path to Akhenaten's kingdom, get a tour. I want to discover more. I ended up contacting an archaeologist that was the chief guy who's doing archaeology in the middle of Egypt, did an article on him. Everything was falling into place, and I decided to go back for my MA. Everything was guiding me that I
Yeah.
needed to serve Egypt, to serve, I don't know, just inspiring passion about Egypt's past. And it's just every door is open to allow me to do that. I've been teaching since about 2017 in schools and leading tours since 2012 to Egypt of an educational nature.
Yeah, there must be a past life connection there. I think that's
Yeah,
really awesome. Yeah. So
maybe.
let's talk a bit also to finish up about your what you do, right? So with Ancient Egypt Alive, I was just thinking of the acronym Make Egypt Great Again, MEGA. I like that. That's even better. But you do travel tours. You talked about learning, online learning, talks, lectures. You have even a podcast. You have immersive touring. I mean, that sounds pretty fascinating. So, what would you say about again what you do, your tour, especially your tours?
Well, I have a Zoom that will be on March, sorry, coming up next week. What month are we in? September 23rd. It's a free, or it's $10. You can come and learn about my tours online. Everything's on ancientegyptalive.com. I have events
Mhm,
on Eventbrite.
mhm.
Ancientegyptalive.com events page takes you to Eventbrite. I have a tour in October. I have a tour in March. I have a tour next November. And I also curate tours. So if someone says, I just want to go with a group of friends and I want to go in April, I want to do this and that, I will work with you on a tour. And our
In
tours are
Egypt.
unique.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And our
I-
tours are
I'll start
unique.
saving up for that. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, our tours are a bit deluxe. So our tours are about, 6,500 USD, but it's 2 weeks all include, like not all inclusive, but we take care of special meals, all your guiding, all your admissions. I really try to put everything in there. But you can do things. I don't do the backpacker stuff. I'd rather, to stay in a three-star hotel in Egypt is not like the Best Western. I'm sorry here. You really need a five-star hotel, I think. Well, at least I do. You can do cheaper. Um, I also wouldn't recommend just getting off the airport in Cairo and just hiring an Uber and doing your own thing or renting a car. Some old guy, sorry, older passenger said, I think we're going to just rent a car when we get to Cairo. And I was laughing. It's the most dangerous thing you can do in Egypt is
Yeah,
crossing the street in Cairo because the
yeah,
traffic is
yeah,
insane.
yeah.
So you need a guide and a driver. You need organization when you travel there. So you need some guidance and to go on an escorted tour. I think certainly the first time. And but I'd love people if people want to take courses with me online, read my content, ask me for help curating tours or anything. That's it. And it's spiritual. Oh, we should talk spirituality maybe another time because I do plug into some of the energy in the sites. It's not at the pyramids, but there's some great energy centers I feel in Egypt, temples that really resonate. So maybe that's a to be continued. I don't know.
To be continued. Yes. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure talking to you, Laura. Laura Ranieri Roy, Egyptologist. You're a writer, founder of Ancient Egypt Live. It was just so illuminating to talk to you. Thank you so much for
I
being on
love
Rock and
that.
Roll.
Make Egypt great again. I'm going to steal
Mega.
that.